With all this controversy with the lawsuit filed by Janel Grant against WWE, John Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon, you have to wonder, will there be many more lawsuits filed against WWE, or specifically, Vince McMahon? All this stuff when it comes to these allegations with sexual assault, sexual misconduct, there's allegations that go back years and years, going back to the scandal in, 1982. And I had that video I done a few days ago when I reacted to that clip of Vince McMahon being on Donahue, when it came to those allegations, and it was against Pat Patterson, it was against Teddy Garvin, and it was against former ring announcer Mel Phillips. One guy that was around at that time in wrestling, and he was in WWF just before that, was a former wrestler, as it has here, former WWE star, Paul Roma. And Paul Roma was on Use Nation a few days ago, and he was saying that there could potentially be stuff out there that could come out very soon, allegations that is even worse than the stuff that came out with this lawsuit filed by Janel Grant. So, and again, even if you haven't read through the whole 67-page document, if you're a wrestling fan, you've heard the stuff in the lawsuit. Stuff, all that stuff there involving Johnny Ace, involving all the sexual relations that happened with Janel Grant, McMahon, and another person there, other men, and the whole thing about defecating on our head. I mean, it's just disgusting stuff that we're hearing, and I shudder to think what could be worse. What could be worse than the stuff there we've heard with Janel Grant? But with this, I'm going to play the interview that Use Nation did with Paul Roma, and I will react as it's going along. So here we go.
84 to 91, you're with WWE. Did you ever hear about some of this kind of awful behavior, any of these allegations? Does any of this sort of sound like the Vince McMahon that you knew?
Yes. It was pretty regular. You heard it on a regular basis for the most part. Then you wouldn't hear it for a while, and then it would come full circle. But it wasn't, so much Vince as it was the people that he had surrounding him. You're talking about a industry where you have young, good-looking, well-built men in the ring, half naked, 3/4 naked, actually. Excuse me. So yeah, it left the door open, and he had a lot of people around them, vice presidents and bookers that were
Pat Patterson. He was vice president.
In a really, really bad situation, especially once you started making some money. You kind of get comfortable with that, and then you find out that your job's on the line. Either do it or get fired. And I witnessed quite a few that walked away. Money wasn't worth it for them to go that route, so to speak.
What had happened to those people that you're saying? You're mentioning that you heard, Paul, quite a few that walked away. What had happened to them that made them want to walk away?
They were asked to do things, sexual things, with other men that they did not want to do. My former partner being one of them. And I was actually in a cab ride in Washington. We were coming back, and the gentleman next to me kept saying, it's not worth it. It's not worth the Benjamins. It's not worth the Benjamins. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, it's not worth it. And I said, what are you talking about? What's not worth it? And he says, just not worth it. And we got back to the hotel. The next day, we were filming it for our second TV taping, and he was gone. He jumped on a flight and went back home and never showed up again to wrestle. And he had an unfortunate accident, hit his head, and passed away while he was asleep. He had a bleed on the brain.
Did he ever tell you what?
Don't know who this guy was. Don't know if anybody would know who this could be.
Not, he didn't tell me who. He just told me what to
And
do
what was
what
it?
they wanted him to do. Sexual favors. And my former partner, one of my former partners, when I was part of the Young Stallions, he was propositioned, and he said he went to one of the agents and told him what had happened. And I said, well, why would you do that? You just ratted on both of us. So, he kind of threw us both under the bus, just starting out.
So to be clear, Paul, to be clear, the person in the cab who said it's just not worth the Benjamins, that person told you that he was propositioned. He wouldn't tell you who it was, if I'm clear, but he told
Correct.
you what happened. Did he tell you that these were executives with the WWE that had propositioned him?
Well, let's look at it this way. That's all it could be. If someone's going to give you money, then it has to be that. There is nothing else. It's not going to be one of the other boys that you're wrestling with. They're not going to offer you money.
Yeah, it's going to be the executives.
It's even
A position of
my
power.
former partner. Same thing. They offered him money, drugs. Just lay on your back. You don't have to do a thing. And he came running right to me when I came into TV. And I said, dude, just, what are you going to do? And he said, I already spoke to Arnold. And I said, well, why would you do that? You killed our team. What do you think he's going to do? He's going to go to the people that propositioned you. And what do you think is going to happen to that? Nothing.
You had these are all allegations. We have to be very clear about
Late
this.
80s, much different time and
former
culture.
Business partner Mario Mancini spoke with us the other day and said he knows of at least one incident from years ago that's even worse than some of the worst allegations in Janel Grant's lawsuit. Do you know what that incident is, and can you tell me tonight?
I really shouldn't right now, but yes, I do know what it is, and it is worse.
Can you characterize it in any way?
Just that Mario and I are really surprised. We spoke about it, and we're surprised that no one has come forward. But on the flip side, I think that, they're of an age now that, they may be married, have kids, and they don't want to open Pandora's box. And I can't blame them. And I said that to Mario. Can you blame them? Would you really want to open this up, this can of worms? No, you wouldn't want to open it up.
Paul Roma, I'm very appreciative of you being on the program, and I think there's obviously some things you need to work out before you can speak more freely about this, but I'd like to invite you back on the program and maybe carry on this conversation a little further. Would that be all right?
So there you have it with Paul Roma. I know Paul Roma in other interviews has talked about this stuff. He mentioned this stuff in an RF shoot interview as well, and he had mentioned about the stuff about the tag team partner he had, Jim Powers, but he didn't seem to really, from what you hear, like Jim Powers to begin with. And the stuff. I mean, for the most part, Paul Roma makes some good points, common sense type points. But I mean, the whole thing. The whole thing with Jim Powers, again, I don't know the exact person who he was propositioned by, but these executives, when you think of the people from 1992 who were accused, you've got the one main guy, Pat Patterson, who was the vice president, and he was known as a very close friend of Vince. So that's the thing, if Jim Powers just goes and says something to the agent, he's just going to go to the executives or Vince, whatever, and nothing would ever be done about it. It's a little bit much of a different culture now when you're talking, post Me Too, Harvey Weinstein, that if something happened like that, whether it be wrestling or any other type of work in the workplace, something you think would be done there, HR would be dealing with that, you'd think. But yeah, it was very bad. It seems to be really bad stuff from back then in the 80s. And I don't know if it was maybe from 92 and that scandal that maybe that scared some people into doing some type of, shit that, that they shouldn't be doing. But the thing is with the scandal in 1982, you had, Pat Patterson They all resigned, those three guys, Patterson, Garvin, Mel Phillips. But then 2 years later, Patterson was the one that was brought back. I don't believe Mel Phillips and Garvin did come back. But then that goes to, the friendship he had with Vince. So then you would think, well, if they've made it a point to bring Patterson back, you think Vince McMahon must have known what was really going on there in the company with this stuff and these propositions that went on allegedly. But from all the stories we hear, you know what I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, Paul Roma, I'd heard some story about Paul Roma about something about confronting Warrior, something about saying that you're doing sexual relations with higher ups, and that's how you're getting your push or something like that. There was something about that I'd heard to do with Warrior, and there is other rumors out there about stuff like that with Warrior. Again, I don't know. I don't believe the stuff that Warrior would have ever happened there with him and Vince like that with sexual relations. I don't believe that. Something with the Shawn Michaels Vince thing, could there be something to that? Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, it's just a lot of sketchy stuff from back in these times. Much different time, a much different culture. And there's the other stuff. I've gotten into that the other day with the whole stuff with the whole H-bomb thing that was happening in the wrestlers. And then there was that allegation there from Brutus the Barber Beefcake towards Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, but he did kind of backtrack on that later and said it was just like an urban legend. So I don't know. I mean, if what he's saying, and he says his friend, business partner Mario is saying is true, that there could be something that will come out worse than Janel Grant. And I don't know when he's saying that, we've talked about it, him and Mario, his partner, is he meaning this is out there on the internet, that this is like stuff they've talked about in other shoot interviews? You have to do a bit of digging for, Paul Roma. I mean, Paul Roma wasn't a super huge name. He was kind of like around close to mid-card. But, I mean, Paul Roma's done a few shoot interviews talking about stuff like this. And, he said that him and Hercules, his old tag partner, would joke that they would have to stay until the end of the show because they're not sucking any DICK, with the higher ups, and it was kind of like a running joke, backstage. But again, that shit would never fly. We're talking 35, 40 years later. That shit would never fly today. So I don't know. No idea where this is going. Could it just get worse and worse with more and more stuff coming out? It could. It very well could. And there is a lot of people speculating online that the stuff will come out around, the week of WrestleMania, or maybe the week before, the week after. And it could be a few people getting exposed there in the company, or people now that you've left the company. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's stuff there, people have even said stuff about Kevin Dunn. And, Kevin Dunn, I mean, I think Kevin Dunn, there might have been a thing with divas and pressuring women if they wanted to get boob jobs and stuff like that. And that was, I mean, that stuff's out there, you know what I mean? About, I think Tommy Dreamer, all he had to do at one diva, I can't remember the diva, but basically all he had to do when he was like a scouting talent in WWE back in the day, all he had to do was just point to their chest. Pointed at the girl's chest as to say, and then that's all they knew. But by him, his finger at their chest, he knew she knew what Dreamer was saying, and then she got the boob job, and then got put up to the main roster. Again, these things can happen in a lot of different industries, but there is definitely a bad atmosphere there in wrestling. There's a lot of seediness, in the industry, and I don't know. I mean, the Vince McMahon stuff is bad enough, right? But when you think, God, there could be even more shocking stuff to come out, and it could be stuff with certain individuals. That it could be people's like they're they're heroes, and they've got a certain reputation, that they obviously wouldn't want that being shattered. So it's not good at all. I mean, I'm thinking back to the stuff with Shawn Michaels. because Shawn Michaels, there was a thing, there was very common chance when around 93, 97, Shawn would do, he was dressed in that certain way, like it was like with chaps, chains, leather, or whatever, and maybe posing for Playgirl didn't help either. But then there was chants back in the day of Shawn is gay, homophobic chants, which would never fly today in wrestling. And then I remember that at a Raw in the Manhattan Center, fans were chanting that, and then you had Bobby Heenan who went, if only they you. And I found that to be a little bit of a strange comment there. That was just like him, just like just a humorous, quick-witted Heenan remark, or was there maybe something to that, Because we hear a lot of stuff about Shawn Michaels and, Vince McMahon. And, there was one particular clip that of Shawn and Vince, this long kind of hug and like this tender moment, and kind of like Vince touching Shawn when he was getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, Shawn Michaels. And it was a little odd, I must say. It was a little odd. I thought to myself, would Vince ever come off that way to any other talent? And I don't think so. Unless it would be like his son-in-law Triple H, or maybe The Undertaker. But I don't know. I don't know if he would come off that way. I really don't. Like, it was quite weird and a little bit creepy, to be honest with you. It was a little bit creepy. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of that rumours with Shawn and Vince back in the day, and a lot of talent would come out and basically say that, old ex-talent, and maybe some of it was like bitter, disgruntled talent. But they would still say, though, how the hell, Shawn, the way Shawn would speak to Vince, people didn't understand that, how he would get the big push and he would still be allowed to speak to Vince McMahon basically like he was a piece of crap on his shoe. So a lot of people thought that was quite strange. But then there's some stuff there about Warrior would speak that same way to Vince, and then maybe that leads into the Warrior Vince rumors. Was there something there? But I know someone was saying in a comment to me, like, because Pat Patterson was responsible for bringing The Rock into WWE, people say, well, maybe something went on there with Patterson and The Rock, and I think, I don't know. I really don't know there. But the thing was, I mean, there was all that allegations back in 1982. Patterson resigned, laid low for a couple of years, and he went back to the WWE. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Rock and his parents would have been aware of those allegations. But again, it was the thing, with it wasn't internet. I mean, there was internet, but it was in its infancy, right? But it wasn't like the big thing with social media and with Twitter and all that, and with hashtags and all, how you could get a big, how it can spread like wildfire, and all it has to be is a hashtag about somebody and something or somebody, and that could get somebody effectively cancelled, right? But so I don't know. It was the big thing, like in the early mid-90s, like it would have been today. But then it might have just been this thing where they did turn the other cheek. Then the Johnson family, and they thought, well, it is what it is, and turned the other cheek for the sake of getting their son a chance. American football didn't work out, so they thought, well, this is it. Then it's going to be wrestling. So I don't know. Again, I don't know of the stuff that happened there with Patterson, The Rock. People have said stuff about Patterson and stories. I know Dutch Mantel on his podcast said, well, Pat was never weird around me. He never propositioned me. But I think it would have been a little bit different because this is back when they would have been wrestlers in the 70s, Patterson and Dutch Mantel. I don't think Patterson would have been doing stuff like that back then. But then there is that stuff that Piper said on that interview with Sean Oliver, which is a little odd. But I think it was more when he got in that position of power and knew he could probably more than likely get away with it. Then he started pulling that shit, Patterson. But maybe that stuff happened with the wrestlers, but maybe it was the very young guys just breaking into the business, like somewhere like when, Piper, with Roddy Piper alluding to certain stuff. And and that was around the time that Legends House reality show came out as well. And I think if you look back, watch Piper. I mean, he does interact with Pat Patterson, but he's not super close, super friendly with him. And when he does kind of give him a compliment, it's not a full-on compliment. You like watch how he says things about Patterson and how he words things. And I think people that was kind of questionable. That whole thing of Patterson publicly coming out as gay, like like everybody knew that he was gay. It was an open, you know what I mean? It wasn't even a secret in wrestling. It was pretty open. But there's definitely some sketchy stuff there with Patterson, as well as Vince. No matter how much they try and rewrite history about Patterson and say what a great matchmaker he was, what a great mind for the business, a genius. He may have been all those things, but he, at the same time, looks like the dude was a predator too. There was predatory behavior there. But yeah, but that's my video now for guys with all this stuff, and it wouldn't be surprising that around within a few more weeks' time that we could hear other stories about other things in the past with other people, not just with McMahon. It really wouldn't surprise me. So I definitely look out for that. But feel free to feel free to subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on all this with all this stuff. Could there be more shocking allegations to come? But that's fine. Thanks, guys. Bye.